Oh boy, that's great. You
Eldon Trueblood, who was a Quaker, wrote a book called The Humor of Christ, and C.K. Chesterton, at the end of Orthodoxy, says that mirth was one of Christ's great virtues. In other words, you don't have to be dry, arid, dour, miserable, and unhappy in all this giving. And indeed, the message that I find to be consistently conveyed is that humor and mirth are really good expressions of love. So sometimes, like I say in the book, the Why Good Things Happen book, when you want to help somebody who's kind of feeling despair and isn't hopeful about much in life, one of the best things you can do is to use a little well-placed humor, tasteful, well-placed, respectful humor to kind of liven things up, and that typically, helps people emotionally. It helps them look at life a little differently and get a little more hopeful. So even mirth, is a way in the right context of expressing love of neighbor.
Yeah, and I think that is probably one of my favorites because I like to laugh, and I can't say that can't say that I'm a comic, but I try to brighten people's day when I can.
How do trees get on the World Wide Web?
Oh, you got me there.
They have to log on. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I'm going to steal that one.
Okay.
I can tell you like the humor part too.
I do. I test high on humor, but that's not one of my best jokes.
I love to listen to, and I'm sure you know who Joel Osteen is, but I always try to turn on to his broadcast really early so that I can get that first joke that he always tells. So I just love to laugh. Now, another portion of or something that I was curious, and I think I probably even asked you this when we saw you in Cleveland, but I wondered, do any of your students or anybody that you talk to ever talk about burnout? Or, I mean, sometimes, I know for me, I always sort of feel like I just don't do enough. I'd like to do more. You get
right.
this guilty feeling like I should be doing more for my friends, family, neighbors, church. And Joyce Myers always says, well, you can't do everything for everybody, but try to help the one or do something. But I never feel like I'm quite doing enough. I mean, you talk about the helper's high, but is there anybody that ever comes to you and says, look, I'm just kind of burnt out with trying to do good?
Oh, absolutely. So, and that's in Why Good Things Happen. That doesn't come out quite strong enough. So I've written a book called the Hidden Gifts of Helping that's coming out in February of 2011. Talks a little more about this, but all these studies, the studies on the helper's high or on volunteering and so forth. First of all, like the helper's high, right? It's basically a study of people who just go out, one afternoon and help in a volunteer organization or are benefiting others in some clear way. And then they come back and they report, and about half of them have a sense of euphoria. But again, it's half full, half empty, because half of them don't, right? So it's not like this is universal, but about half of people do really feel elated, and we understand that now, neurologically and biochemically and all of that. And some 40% feel a sense of warmth, and 15 or 16% feel an alleviation of aches and pains, partly because they get their minds off their own aches and pains, and their problems, which is known to be beneficial, among pain clinics. But also, there's a release of a brain chemical called the endorphins, which is like a natural opiate, and that can be helpful too. So yeah, this is really good. But again, these are low threshold studies. All the studies on volunteerism. Okay, yeah, a couple of hours a week doing something special, or one afternoon a week in one big study out in California where people would do 5 acts of kindness that go beyond their usual levels, right? So, these studies are what's called, I mean, not to be technical, but they're a curve. In other words, the benefits in happiness and so forth, they tail off. They develop significantly early on with just, again, a relatively light commitment of, say, several hours a week. But then it's not as though you do more and more and more and more, and you're going to feel better and better and better. In fact, people need to be very careful of not overdoing it. And most of these studies talk about, everyday folks who are not professionally locked into, say, social work or psychological counseling, where they have to be empathic all the time, and that can be very difficult, So, so you're quite right. These are studies that don't say do more and more and more, and you'll feel better and better and better. They say, do enough, and so that you meaningfully shift your attention away from self and the problems of the self, and contribute to the lives of others at some level of comfort.
Yeah, I was just rereading. I don't know if you're familiar with the book Servolution, and the work that Dino Russo is doing in New Orleans, and it's an excellent book. And he was pretty much stating the same thing in his book. Just to do what you can do, and because sometimes you can get a little burnout. And he was talking about the work that he and some other pastors were doing with Katrina.
Yes.
And there was a lot of work to be done, and of course it was rewarding, and they enjoyed it, but they had to be sure that that the workers stayed fresh and anew, and so I just thought that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah. And ministers, people in ministry, have problems in this area. I mean, there are some studies, even one that came out a month ago, national study on clergy. They feel kind of, well, they're sort of called by God, and they're wanting to make themselves available 24/7 for everybody's needs, and sometimes they have a hard time drawing boundaries and saying, okay, there's a certain point where I just need to step back and spend time with my family, or just go out to the shores of Lake Erie, or take a walk in Tappan Zee Park in Oberlin. Smell the flowers, just do something for myself that's enjoyable, go see a movie. I mean, that's really important. And so you do need to draw some boundaries, and don't get on the sort of altruistic treadmill where you're just trying to do, more than your neighbor. And that doesn't work. And everybody's different, but some people, because they have deep kinds of spiritual experiences and a sense of theological meaning, do an incredible amount, and they seem to be almost inexhaustible. And those folks really interest me because they seem to suggest that there is some source of love in the universe that's higher than our own, and that when we tap into it, or when we are graced by it, sometimes we can do an awful lot more than we can just on our own.
And that you mentioned that, and I keep throwing up these other people, but John Bevere, I'm not sure if you're familiar with his work, but he has an incredible book out too, where it just talks about that amazing grace from God, where you can kind of tap into this help from on high, and of course God is our source, and He can just kind of supernaturally give you that extra strength and push that you need to get the job done. And you're looking back and saying, I can't believe that I'm able to do this. And when other people are looking at you, thinking, how there are not enough hours in the day, how can you, volunteer and do this and do that? But God will give you what you need as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Post, I can't believe that our 30 minutes is just about up. There's so much more that looks like we could cover. I would love to speak to you again, perhaps one day.
Sure.
But this has been so interesting, and your book is great. I would encourage our listeners to please go out and get it. And again, it's called Why Good Things Happen to Good People. And, of course, Dr. Post's website is www.drpost, www.unlimitedloveinstitute.com. Was there another website also that you wanted to give? Or
well, there's a www.whygoodthingshappen.com, and then the one you mentioned. Hey, I hope that Reverend Dr. Otis Moss Jr. is doing well. Do you know him?
Oh, yes.
Was the minister at the Olivet Baptist Church in downtown Cleveland for many years. One of the great figures in American religious history, and I just, whenever I think of Cleveland, I think of Pastor Moss. He wrote the foreword to Why Good Things Happen, and
yes, he did.
He's such a great human being. There are a lot of great people. I don't think I could have written that book without being in Cleveland for 20 years, because in a lot of ways, it's a testimony to the spirit of a lot of Clevelanders who know what generosity is.
I read the foreword, and Dr. Moss is tremendous. I had visited his church some time ago. I'm not sure if he's still pastoring, if he's retired.
He retired. He actually retired about a year ago or so, a year and a half ago.
Wow. Okay, well, again, I just ask everybody to log onto the website, and if not, you can log onto our website at www.reachingcaring.org for more information. And Outreach News is an association with Reaching Out Through Compassionate Caring, your outreach connection. And thank you very much, Dr. Post, and please have a good evening.
Fabulous. What a delight. Thank you, Linda, for having me, and God bless you all.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to this edition of Outreach News. Outreach News is also linked to YouTube, Twitter, Podbean, Facebook, and iTunes. Just search under the single word Reaching Caring. Outreach News is a division of Reaching Out Through Compassionate Caring. Please check out our website at www.reachingcaring.org.